Hello everyone, my name is John Chihawk of Anti-Hero Brand Press and AHB Kids. As you may have seen in some previous videos, I am a comic book creator. I write, pencil, ink, color, edit, letter, self-publish my own works. I've also been published in the first volume of Unite and Take Over, comic book stories inspired by songs of the Smiths. That was through Spazdog Press. Everything else has been through Anti-Hero Brand or AHB Kids, a subsidiary of Anti-Hero Brand, the all-ages version. Today I'm not here to talk to you about a hardcore review or even a video review or even to talk more about what I do. I love comic books. The main reason I started a Patreon and I am doing this YouTube channel and everything else is to promote awareness of comic books, promote awareness of my comic books and my efforts to create something that hopefully individuals want to read and check out and share with other people. I thought what's one of the best things to do is to go through I would have made a list of 10, but it would have been really, really hard. Coming up with a list of 5 was difficult. So I'm going to do my top 5 favorite comic book stories right now. In the previous video, I did mention my top 3 and the creative team. So I'm going to go backwards on this one. The video might be a little bit longer, so I do apologize. Number 5, The Tick, the complete Edlund edition. I picked this up at San Diego Comic-Con 2010, I believe, from New England Comics booth with Ben Edlund there. He even signed it, drew a Tick head sketch in it. Was super nice, talked to me about the animated series that I had just picked up the DVDs for. I gave him a copy, or I gave him my sketchbook and asked him if he would draw in it. He did it. He didn't charge me anything. He was very, very nice, very congenial. There was a panel I was really wanting to go to that was starting right when I handed off my sketchbook, which, by the way, previously, and was still in there at the same time, a Batman head sketch from Bruce Timm, a Punisher sketch by Tyler Kirkham, some other pretty good name sketches in there, and he was really cool. Let me leave the sketchbook at his table, go to the panel, came back, gave it back to me, didn't like toss it, didn't do anything jerky with it. It's also a very special sketchbook for me because I guess she's my mother-in-law, or my sister's mother-in-law, Marilyn, for my birthday in 2004, we went to go visit my sister's in-laws in Albany, Missouri, and it was during like my birthday weekend, and she cooked me, or baked me, I should say, the best pumpkin pie I've ever had in my entire life, because that's my favorite pie. And then as an added bonus, she had bought like a hardbound sketchbook with not hardbound, but like the hardcover with the wire binding on it, and then stitched a cover, like a slip cover for it, with a little signature panel in it that said "Made for You Especially" by Marilyn Poff. I decided I would not color or draw or sketch in that sketchbook. Instead, that would be my special sketchbook where I would get my favorite artists and people to just draw in it. And at my first comic book convention that I got to go to post-graduating college in 2005, I got a couple of sketches in it that were really cool. One of the first big ones being Bruce Timm drawing like a 10-second Batman head sketch. But let me get back to this because I'm rambling. The Tick, just a really bizarre, funny superhero story, and it's very much in the the vein of Don Quixote, of this character he's an anti-hero in the sense that he's not altruistic. Like he's doing it because he wants to do the right thing, but he's kind of clumsy, he's kind of bumbling. You're not really sure if he's all there kind of thing. And that's what makes it so fun. That and the bizarre character roster that you have, especially going into the animated series and things like that. I mean, you have Arthur, this guy who wears a moth costume. You've got the Hedge Ninjas, which are great. And there's a quote from the Kick that actually got into my quote book, where he's talking about ninjas, and he thought that they were only good for getting sucked into the jet engines at airports. Now moving on, number 4, something that I just recently read for the very, very first time, and it moved me a lot just because of the story, very much in the vein of the movie that followed it several years later, Old Man Logan. Not the current Old Man Logan series, the story from the mid-2000s, written by Mark Millar and drawn by Steve McNiven, of Wolverine retired from being the best there is at what he does and vowing never to pop his claws again, doesn't ever want to hurt anybody. He's got a family, he's got a wife and kids, but the world's been taken over. All the heroes have been killed off. And then you find out in the story exactly what happened and how Wolverine was involved in this saga coming about. It's really precedes the movie Logan, in that he becomes the reluctant gunfighter. You know, he deals with what he has to deal with, and he goes on this somewhat insane, ridiculous mission with Hawkeye, who's one of the few remaining heroes. And, he's looking to try to just preserve his way of life, which is respectable because I think that's how a lot of us in this world are. We don't want to get too far involved in one thing or the other because of that fear of what that can do to our safety. And what we're comfortable with. But just an exquisite story. That the artwork is beautiful. Mark Millar, who usually writes some pretty out there, outrageous type stories where, people are just offing each other left and right in fairly ridiculous ways, like with Kick-Ass and Wanted. Sure, there's a lot of blood and guts and violence in Old Man Logan. Especially with the backstory. However, it's way, way different. It's paced super well. Again, Steve McNiven is a master when it comes to pacing this. Probably one of my favorite Mark Millar stories ever as well. Number 3, as I mentioned in my review that I did earlier, The Punisher, Welcome Back, Frank, from Marvel Knights, the year 2000. Beautiful story. Yeah, the artwork can be a bit stiff at times, but the violence is on par with anything that you can possibly think of. If you want utter chaos and violence, turn to either Mark Millar or Garth Ennis, and you're going to get something that's pretty outrageous and over the top. Number 2, All-Star Superman. Up until I started reading this series, it's a maxi series. It's 12 issues, just like Punisher, Welcome Back, Frank. I liked Superman because of what he did for the comic book genre. And, I enjoyed the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. I even liked, Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. I'll be one of those people who will stand out and say that I like the movie, and I'll explain that in a later video. All-Star Superman is the story of potential redemption and also xenophobia, in that Superman is dying. And in his attempts to do some of the greatest feats that he's ever done in his lifetime, again runs afoul of Lex Luthor. And the things that occur in this 12 issues is nothing short of amazing. Written by Grant Morrison, drawn by Frank Quitely. There's so many great parts about this this story. Sorry. But one that stands out to me is the side story that comes in, where Superman stops everything he's doing in the last couple weeks of his life, and he goes to save a young person from attempting suicide, and explains to this person that things will get better, and that their doctor, who they had been trying to reach, really was busy and really could not get to them. It wasn't the doctor blowing them off. I felt that was a really beautiful moment in this whole dynamic of Superman trying to, prove for the greater good and provide for the greater good. I think stopping and doing those little things, and I mean, stopping somebody from committing suicide is not a little thing, but one person versus the whole planet, and you look at the dynamic of, yeah, there's people who are Batman fans and say, well, Batman's, so strong because he doesn't have any powers and he does all this stuff. And Superman is just raised with this Midwestern ideal of being a good person. There's no fear or consequence for not doing it. He does it because he's a good person. He's the ideal of what we can all be if we applied ourselves to that. And number one, Teenagers from Mars. It was written about, previewed in an issue of Wizard magazine in late 2000 or early 2001. I asked one of the local comic book shops here in Tucson if they could pull it for me, and got all 9 issues. I actually had to travel up to Phoenix to get, I think it was issue 7, because they, for whatever reason, they couldn't get a copy of it. I've owned at least 3 or 4 copies of the trade paperback. Met Rick Spears at San Diego Comic-Con 2008 and got him to sign a copy. I've been trying to figure out a way to get Rob G to sign the same copy, but I do own a piece of artwork that he drew for somebody at ApeCon several years ago that the person got rid of on eBay, and I feel kind of crappy because I got it off of eBay and not directly from him, but it's one of the most important pieces that I have. Think of it as Teenagers from Mars is essentially Natural Born Killers without the killing. Macon Blair and Madison Lee are two kind of star-crossed lovers. He's very punk-ish. So is she, but she kind of comes from like the suburbs. He's already living on his own. There's a series of grave robbings that lead the community of Mars, the small town of Mars, to ban and censor comic books. And so the prohibition leads Macon's comic book that he's working on called Lines on Paper to be confiscated, and he's rounded up as like a suspect of leading all of this crime. It's a pretty crazy story, but it's equal parts punk rock, comic books mayhem. It's all done in black and white, which I love, and it has one of the most true love moments that I think I've ever seen, when after Madison has told Macon to go F off because he's playing the altruistic hero and he doesn't want her to get hurt, she punches him in the stomach and, calls him a pussy because she's like, I'm not your damsel in distress. And he comes back, and when he sees her again, he doesn't say anything, and he punches her in the face. Now, for those of you thinking domestic violence, it's done in a comic book. It's him showing her that he doesn't see her as this weak damsel in distress. She's tough. She's rigorous. And then she straight up socks him in the face, and he almost rolls off the second floor of her house. It's a really beautiful tale, and I just, every time I read it, I find something new about it. And I strongly encourage you guys to check out any one, if not all of these books. The two that may not be on everybody's reader lists are, of course, The Tick and Teenagers from Mars. But I thank you for your time. Stay tuned for additional top 5 videos and reviews. This is John Cheehawk, Anti-Hero Brand Press.